Lieutenant Governor, statewide elected officials, Speaker Hickman, President Pro Tem Beaman, members of the court, the honorable senators and representatives and cabinet members, tribal leaders, distinguished guests, and citizens of the great state of Oklahoma. It is my duty as well as my great honor to be here today to discuss the state of the state. Before we begin, let's acknowledge two great Oklahomans and irreplaceable public servants who were in this chamber last year but aren't with us today. Representative David Dank and Labor Commissioner Mark Costello. We lost David in April. We lost Mark in August. Though they are not physically here with us today, the work they did is irreplaceable and everlasting. We do have Mark's wife, Kathy Costello, and two of her children. Kathy, I see you. Anna Marie and Ian, thank you so much for joining us. Kathy, I want to thank you personally for your work that you've been doing on our mental health delivery system. Thank you for your dedication to that. God bless you. I'm also joined today by my loving husband, Wade, and two of our children, Christina and Adam, and my new daughter-in-law, Elizabeth Christensen. Now, you know how parents always like to embarrass their children? Well, with the invention of modern technology, my son, who's in Austin, Texas, is watching his mom online. So, hi, Price. It's my turn to embarrass you. Love you. Hope you're doing well in Texas. Well, this session offers us huge challenges, and there are huge challenges before us. Our oil and gas sector has taken a dramatic downturn. We have warfare on many domestic fronts with our energy producers that are hurting. And when our domestic energy producers hurt, Oklahoma hurts too. I'm reminded of 5 years ago when I gave my first State of the State address. We faced a number of difficult circumstances as we started climbing out of the national recession. We worked hard to forge a more prosperous state. Just 2 years ago, we had the fourth fastest growing economy in the nation. Our savings account fund, the rainy day fund, had grown to $535 million, quite an improvement over the $2.03 that was left remaining in the fund when I took office in 2011. And today, as Yogi Berra was fond of saying, it's like deja vu all over again. Now, just as then, we are seeing some jobs disappearing in the wake of an economic crisis that is largely out of our control. We've seen a 70% drop in oil prices in less than 2 years, which has had a tremendous impact upon our revenue. There is an excess of supply of oil and gas in the marketplace, and the instability worldwide in their markets doesn't help us. It's a tough world out there, and it's easy to get discouraged or timid. Many of us have heard the old saying, never let a crisis go to waste. We can use this budget crisis to create new opportunities to build a solid foundation for Oklahoma. We can do it. First, it starts with the budget. The oil price collapse and the decades-old structural problems with the budget have caused almost $1 billion shortfall. How we will respond will define our future more than anything else. We have tough decisions ahead, folks. We need to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work. But if we work together, we can overcome this. We can do it. Even in this fiscal climate, we can pass a budget that begins with the type of meaningful fiscal reform that the state needs. That's the type of reform you'll see proposed in my executive budget. But first, I want us to consider why we need bold action on the budget. So, in front of you, there is a spreadsheet with 3 approaches to the budget. Each column is marked with colors of a common traffic light, with red for stop, yellow for caution, and green for go. Take a look at the red column first. This shows what happens if we take no action. If we don't change the way we apportion and collect revenues, most state agencies will be faced with a 13.5% appropriation cut for the 2017 fiscal year, or a total cut of 16.5% since July 1st, considering December's revenue failure. This approach would, for example, cut common education funding by $330 million. Yes, $330 million. We can all agree that this is an unacceptable path. It's not a path that I want Oklahoma to take, and I know we can do better. Now, look at the yellow column. This is a quick and easy shortcut, often used in the past. It withdraws every penny available from the rainy day fund, and it reduces agency cuts to 10%. That's still a $244 million cut to public education that we can all agree is not acceptable. The path in the yellow column isn't one Oklahoma should go down either. Now, the green column shows the budget I propose. This budget takes control of the challenges we face today and puts us on a far more better footing for the future. It makes the necessary cuts that will be required with continued efficiencies from agencies. It prioritizes our spending, and it lessens those reductions in core service areas whenever possible. It modernizes our tax code to make it more consistent with the 21st century commerce that we now have. Because this budget proposes using recurring revenue, it uses 0 one-time revenue. Thank you, Scott. You heard me right. There is no one-time money in this budget. It doesn't even use the rainy day fund either. We need to keep the rainy day fund as flush as we can because the energy sector downturn may last longer than anyone ever expected. We need to budget accordingly. While we can't control the price of oil, we can control our budget. Let's take charge of the budget this session. We can do it. My budget addresses structural imbalances. It fixes problematic tax policy. It prioritizes spending. It puts recurring, stable revenue on the table. This is the type of budget I want you to send me for approval. It's going to require hard work and important votes, but it'll be the right thing to do for future generations of Oklahomans. In my budget, we acknowledge that the revenue downturn we're in, and we make strategic cuts to agencies. Most of the agencies will see an appropriation reduction of 6%. That's not pleasant, but it's a far better position than a 13.5% or 10% across the board cut and depleting our savings account. We can do this. This budget makes specific recommendations for capturing $910 million in recurring revenues for appropriations that will help fund core services next year and every year in the future. Of that $910 million, my budget proposes $181.6 million to come from a personal consumption tax on cigarettes. Smoking is Oklahoma's leading cause of preventable death, and it costs our state $1.6 billion in related health care costs each year. I will tell you, though, that our smoking rate has declined 19% since I took office, but 1 in 5 Oklahomans still smokes. This is the most important thing we can do to improve Oklahoma's overall health ranking. And I know we all want that. Thank you, doctor. I got one person with guts in the room. Beyond that proposal, my budget has $729 million in overall revenues for appropriations. I'm offering bold, specific solutions to fix our budget, and here they are. $125 million to come from non-appropriated agency revenue sharing. Some non-appropriated agencies remit a portion of their fees or fines and other revenues back to the General Revenue Fund for appropriations, and others do not. $19.7 million a year by eliminating non-statutory, non-critical pass-through appropriations. $125 million a year by passing Representative Tom Newell's legislation, automating reconciliation of some agency revolving funds, which usually contain about $1.5 billion. This transfer of monies from these accounts is often mischaracterized as one-time revenue, despite the fact the majority of these accounts replenish each year. These are funds that are not really one-time funds, as evidenced by a chart I'm going to show you on the right. Gentlemen, you can see starting back from previous years in 2011 how these funds replenish year after year. This is a structural change to our budget. Next proposal is $40 million a year by reallocating apportionments back to the General Revenue Fund that currently go to noble but non-critical functions. Remember, just a few years ago, 55 cents of every dollar we collected went to the General Revenue Fund. Today, just 45 cents of every dollar collected goes there, and it is continuing to decline. You can see this on the chart in front of me. You can see what it looks like. And finally, $200 million a year by modernizing our state sales and use tax exemptions. We talk about it every year. Let's do something this year. The sales tax code in Oklahoma today isn't much different than it was in 1980, despite huge changes in the way we do commerce and the way it's conducted and the way consumers purchase goods and services. Reading our sales tax code is like watching a movie on a VHS tape when you can use Netflix. Some of you older ones may not know what that means, but my children have taught me what that means. Modernizing the sales tax code means keeping the same low rates and applying them in ways that better reflect today's commerce and consumer behaviors. We can start by taking a look at the $8 billion, that's billion with a B, in the annual sales tax exemptions. Told you we're going to have some hard talk today. We're going to get realistic. We exempt more in state sales tax than we appropriate each session. You can see that on the chart on my left. It shows our total budget, 6.9, over $8 billion that is in our sales tax exemptions. Now, we've asked around, can anybody remember any of these ever getting repealed, let alone reviewed? Surely some of that $8 billion can be revisited. Let me just tell you, if we took just 1% of the $8 billion, that would net us $80 million more to go to core government services. This budget proposal also includes eliminating outdated exemptions and looking at other at areas in other states that apply sales tax that aren't subject to sales tax in Oklahoma. Texas, for example, their sales tax covers roughly 60 more categories than Oklahoma's. New Mexico's sales tax covers 130 more categories than Oklahoma's. These services component of the economy has, for decades, been the fastest growing segment in the U.S. economy, and our tax code does not reflect that. If we don't adjust our tax structure to reflect the change in commerce, there will be increasing pressure to raise government revenue in less palatable ways. So this approach could help us solve this issue. It could also help us present an opportunity to reduce the state sales tax rate, which is currently the 6th highest in the nation. And for any mayors or city council people that may be out there, this will help your cities fund essential services like fire and police, and we're going to need your help to get it done. You're a former mayor. We all know that cities and states are losing out on the sales tax revenue each year as more business is conducted online. And states like Oklahoma can't collect sales tax because of federal inaction. So I'm proposing that we all need to call on Congress to level the playing field for small businesses and Oklahoma retailers by implementing a fair tax system for online sales tax. We have to help our local communities keep local businesses healthy and fund core services. Now, some of those are some of the reoccurring stable real revenues in my budget. I think these are good ideas that Oklahomans can support, and they will have bipartisan appeal. Democrats and Republicans will support most of them because we both want to fund core government services. Taxpayers will support them because they will expand the tax base so we can keep tax rates low now and maintain it in the future. And we can also maintain our competitiveness and help our businesses be more prosperous in our state. These proposed revenue streams will lay a solid foundation to enhance outcomes and elevate opportunities. And finally, it's important for future governors to have a better, more stable revenue streams than I did, or as policymakers have right now, so that the policymakers, the agencies, and the public aren't faced with constant revenue uncertainty. So that gets us to the expenditure side of my budget. As I said, we have to face the revenue reality. Most agency appropriations in this budget are reduced by 6%. However, the reductions are smaller for critical core service agencies, and the following agencies will receive a 3% reduction: the Department of Human Services, the Health Department, the Health Care Authority, Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, the Department of Public Safety, and the Oklahoma School of Science and Math, and the Office of Juvenile Affairs. There are 3 targeted appropriation increases in this budget. Each is related to the 3 pillars of my administration in the second term. And as I shared in this speech last year, my top priorities for Oklahoma in this second term are going to be improving education, reducing the state's incarceration rate, and improving our health outcomes. Those priorities are reflected in my budget and in the policy proposals I'm most interested in seeing this session. Now, first, we need to talk about our state prisons. The situation in Oklahoma's prisons is very serious. Due to the revenue failure declaration of the Department of Corrections will run out of money this year before July 1st. To prevent that, the department would have to make cuts causing it to house prisoners in unsecured areas. It might have to furlough correction officers and have other undesirable outcomes. Correction officers put their lives on the line, and we have to help them. For the sake of public safety, we have to get additional money to the Department of Corrections. This budget proposes the Department of Corrections receive an annualized $20 million increased supplemental appropriation this year and a $10 million appropriation increase next year to address continued offender growth and to keep the public safe. But it's a fact that Oklahoma still ranks #1 in female incarceration, and we consistently rank in the top 5 in male incarceration. Again, this has been a decades-old problem in our state. So today, I'm also calling for serious sentencing changes that will preserve public safety while keeping control of prison costs and reduce incarceration rates. Now that I have bipartisan support, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Oklahoma's drug possession sentences haven't deterred substance abuse and have filled our prisons to overcapacity. These sentences, while well-intentioned, tend to send some of the most nonviolent offenders into prison for years and years, where they live alongside violent offenders whose bad influences can make nonviolent offenders worse. So this session, I'm calling on lowering Oklahoma's mandatory drug possession sentences. First, let's allow district attorneys to have the discretion to file any first-time drug offense as a misdemeanor. I know you can't believe it, Richard. Next, we lower the mandatory sentence from 2 to 10 years in prison for drug offenses, for nonviolent offenses, to 0 to 5 years in prison. For second felony offenses for drug possession, lower the mandatory sentence from 2 years to life to 0 to 10 years. And for third felony offenses for drug possession, lower the mandatory sentence from 6 years to life with no probation to 0 to 15. For property crimes, let's raise the value of a felony crime from $500 to $1,000. The $500 benchmark has been in place since 2002, and it needs to be raised. A teen who steals someone's smartphone today could be branded for life as a felon because smartphones cost more than $500. 20 years ago, most cell phones cost less than $100. My 40-member task force of law enforcement professionals recommended these proposals, which, if fully implemented, could prevent thousands of people annually from becoming a felon for life. which makes it harder for them to get a job, makes it harder for them to support themselves, and breaks up our Oklahoma families. Our state prisons are at 119% capacity. We just can't keep doing what we've been doing. It's not working. We must also enhance law enforcement's ability to protect Oklahomans. We can make Oklahoma law enforcement stronger and more efficient while keeping the public safe by consolidating targeted law enforcement agencies. The second area receiving additional funds in my budget is the health and well-being of children through the Department of Human Services. This budget sends DHS $11.3 million to fully fund the Pinnacle Plan. It's important to keep our commitment for the sake of thousands of foster children who deserve better futures than what they would have otherwise. Last year, I launched an initiative called Oklahoma Fosters that encourages people to foster and adopt children in state custody. The Oklahoma Fosters program is working. That's the good news. One of our great Oklahoma families that answered the call to serve is a Siemens family of Tulsa. Brian and Chris have both stepped up to foster 7 children and to adopt 3, in addition to having their own biological children. They are hard-working individuals, community advocates, and have big, beautiful hearts. So I'd like to say thank you to Brian and Chris for helping Oklahoma's children, and I know that you're here with some of your children now. Would you please stand up? Thank you for coming today. Next, Oklahoma's future sits in our classrooms of today. The education of our children remains one of my top priorities in the budget, even in fiscal climates like this year. I support, and I know my fellow Oklahomans support, overwhelmingly giving our teachers a pay raise. This budget appropriates $178 million in new money for a permanent $3,000 teacher pay raise for every teacher in the state. And we can do it without raising the state sales tax to the rate that would be the highest in the nation. I'm excited about it, and we can do it. Now, I want to talk to you about an old dinosaur nobody wants to bring out of the closet. Just as I talked earlier about the decades-old structural budget problems, it's time to have an honest discussion about the decades-old structural problems in our education system and how we can give our children a quality education they deserve. Listen to the words of a former governor. When I sat back, very back of this aisle over here, as a young legislator 23 years ago, he said, and I quote, "We need more dollars in the classroom. We need fewer school districts. Real education improvements are impacted by better organization at least as much as through additional revenues. It's unrealistic to force everyone in the state to fund local school inefficiencies. And that was said by former governor, Democrat Governor David Walters in 1993 in his State of the State speech, and my, how things have not changed. It's time to merge the administrative costs of our state's underperforming K-8 dependent school districts by putting them into existing K-12 school districts. Now, to be very clear, this does not mean closing rural schools. This would get more money to the classrooms, enhance educational outcomes in a more effective way. It must ensure that our students are provided with the highest quality education instruction through advanced curriculums and good facilities. Now, to help weather this energy sector downturn and its effect upon our school funding, let's give school districts the flexibility to use their building funds for teacher pay and benefits if local officials determine it's prudent and pressing to meet their needs. This would free up around $200 million at the local level that is currently restricted for other uses. Now, I know this isn't a panacea and it won't be used by every single school district, but it does give them some flexibility that will help schools. It also will modernize the use of the ad valorem tax base and give districts more flexibility to meet the real needs. This would be a huge difference for our school systems. And in times like these, I want to just go on to mention one other topic. My Oklahoma Works Education Initiative is more important than ever with developing partnerships between schools, local businesses, and other key partners with its intent to boost educational attainment and to better align workforce with the needs of our employers. Now finally, I'm 100% supportive of education savings accounts. Welcome. All students learn differently and should have the opportunity to attend a school that has the best environment for that student to become successful. This can be accomplished through education savings accounts while still protecting school finances. Senator Clark Jolly and Representative Jason Nelson have legislation on this issue. Send it to me, and let's give students and their parents a chance for better success in their education school systems than they have today. Now, I do recognize that some of the things I've been asking you today to do are some of the hardest things that maybe you've ever been asked to do by a governor, but they are some of the most important things that we need to do for our state. We were sent here to lead, and we need to lead now more than ever. We have very smart, capable people in this room and throughout state government. We can do this. Now, there's one more big lift I want to talk to you about, and that's this building. Thanks for your action 2 years ago, we finally started on the Capitol restoration. We have contractors on the site fixing this irreplaceable building that has literally been crumbling down around us for far too long. We're making the People's House safe to visit, to work in again, and it's also one of our top tourist destinations and it's the seat of our government, and we're finally on the path to treating it as such. We've always known that $120 million in a bond issue you passed 2 years ago was just a start, not a finish. We know the contractors have told us that they think it will cost somewhere around another $120 million to complete this very important job. Let's finish the Capitol's most pressing needs. And I also want to remind you that in 2017, we will be celebrating with a party the 100th birthday of this beautiful Capitol building, and we sure don't want to stop construction in the middle of that. Interest rates remain low, and the new bond wouldn't be issued until 2018, when 40% of our existing bond principal rolls off the books, so we can do this in a way that doesn't affect next year's budget. This is a legacy opportunity for all of you. Let's finish it, and let's do the job right. Oklahomans are known for their can-do spirit, from the days of the land runs to the booms and busts in our economy to moments that shook our core sense of well-being. We are the best during our most challenging times, and we can do it. If you think back over the last 5 years, we've overcome many challenges, and we've had many successes. In 2011, Oklahoma's unfunded pension liability was $16 billion. But we cut it in half, and it stands at about $8.8 billion today. It's a great accomplishment. See you giving a bump back there. Good job. We made Oklahoma more business-friendly when we enacted tort reform measures, moving Oklahoma from 42nd to 33rd and reducing frivolous lawsuits. We transitioned Oklahoma to an administrative workers' compensation system, taking care of injured workers while also saving $368 million for businesses since 2012. We greatly enhanced cybersecurity and technology efficiency by reducing technology expenses by $100 million. We decreased our structurally deficient bridges from more than 700 to about 340, and we're on track to fix the remainder by the time I leave office in 2019. Chancellor, we've increased the number of degrees and certificates and beat our goal by averaging 2,788 additional degrees and certificates a year, building a better educated workforce. We also reached a record high last year with the number of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math degrees and certificates, with a 28% increase over the last 5 years. That's huge. We enacted the Reading Sufficiency Act, which I have long championed, and it has helped our elementary school students bolster their reading skills. State fourth grade readers improved their reading scores by 5 points in 2015, putting Oklahoma above the national average with the third most significant state gain in the country. We implemented the A through F grading system for public schools, which serves as a guide for parents and for school district patrons to know how their schools are performing. It's also helpful for school districts and teachers because it allows them to see where they should focus on improvements and adjustments. Today, I'd like to recognize the administration and staff of the Gore School District. Gore Elementary School took the results of the grading system and improved the C score it received in 2013 and improved it to an A+ rating. There they are up here. It's working exactly the way we want it to. Gore Upper Elementary has also improved its scores, going from a D- in 2013 to a C+ in 2015. So I appreciate all your hard work, the hard work of the faculty and the students. Some are with us today, so thank you so much for joining us here today. Congratulations and keep going. We provided the highest funding level for mental health in state history. Thank you. $17 million more since I've been governor. And we enacted historic legislative action to decrease the number of people who are addicted to prescription drugs and reduce substance abuse fatalities in the state of Oklahoma. This is one for this side. We let taxpayers keep more of their hard-earned money to help the middle class. But you're welcome to stand if you want to. You are welcome to stand if you want to, though. In all seriousness, we have faced tough challenges before, and working together, we can solve today's problems again. We can do it, and we've done it before. Oklahomans do the hard work day in and day out. Just look at our first responders who, in the past year alone, have provided world-class responses to floods, tornadoes, blizzards, and ice storms. I wasn't going to say that word, but thank you for reminding me. My thanks go out especially to those who were in the ice storms on Thanksgiving and Christmas weekends. So many sacrificed their own personal safety and did what it took to keep our fellow Oklahomans safe, and that's what's known as the Oklahoma Standard. These Oklahomans are real heroes. We need to do them justice by doing our job here at the Capitol so they can keep doing theirs. In closing, I want to share something very special with you today. I mentioned earlier that it's a tough world out there, and it really is, especially for our men and women in the uniform. Here's the special news. For the first time since I've been governor, no National Guard units are deployed overseas. Since 9/11, the Oklahoma Guard has answered the call over and over again to protect our homeland and to defend liberty. Let's give them all a round of applause for their continued service to our state and our nation. If we have any National Guard members, will you just raise your hand that have joined us here today? Let's give them a round of applause. I look forward to a productive session working with all of you. Thank you for your service. God bless you, and God bless the state of Oklahoma.